well. So let's keep this day going. That was a super inspiring presentation, but we're going to hear some more about innovative companies, people that are doing really cool stuff today, beginning with the next group that's going to come up here. One of the best tools today for driving innovation is to go fast with DevOps. DevOps, Rackspace has a service that we call the DevOps Automation Service that helps take care of the infrastructure and the operations even for a lot of our customers so that they can concentrate on driving innovation into their products. In a few minutes, we're going to have a customer called Zipline that's going to come up here. In the meantime, we're going to have Prashanth Chandrasekar. Prashanth is the general manager of our DevOps Automation Service business unit, and why don't we welcome Prashanth up to the stage.
Good morning, everybody. It's awesome to be here in Chicago, especially with our customer Zipline. They're from these parts, from St. Louis, very, very hot startup. And you'll hear their story about how they're driving innovation in this era, specifically in their, their problem set. But here, the kind of the topic that's at hand, DevOps, it's such a gem to hear, Guy Kawasaki talk about innovation and how DevOps in my world actually, drives that whole mission, right, for our companies. And so DevOps, in our mind, at Rackspace, it's a very, very profound topic. It's one that allows you to really accelerate your innovation cycles, like he talked about jumping cycles. It also allows you to reduce the cost of innovation, which is like a huge economic thing for us. So with that, so a few years ago, The Economist published this article. I thought it was really seminal because it talks about these traditional industries. In Chicago will relate to this, which is you've got traditional manufacturing industries that are have been around for many decades, and for them they're going through this this transformation where they're really going through this digital era. And so you see this individual, and that's really kind of the point that I want to make here, with this individual at this terminal with access to all this variable compute, storage, networking, and essentially what we call the cloud today, and has all this ability to basically create something that is highly iterative and really digitized. And that is that's really kind of the a sign of the times. Today you have so much access to this raw power, but you really don't have necessarily all the tools to basically be able to take it to create innovation as a result of that. So this concept actually can be extended to multiple industries and companies. So you think about everything from the hotel industry, with Airbnb, as many of you I'm sure have used, to something like the Khan Academy, where you're taking learning and really being able to really take education to far places of the earth. And the reason you're able to do these these sort of things in these industries and disrupt them is because you're able to constantly talk to your customers, iterate, as Guy was talking about, go through that version 1.1 to all the way to version 4 in lightning speed. And you're not taking a lot of time to do that because you're very much close to the customer. You're iterating very quickly based on discrete feedback, and you're not waiting 6 months to release a feature, but you're getting very quickly to the answer. So essentially, companies today, you can be the Airbnbs and the Ubers of the world and disrupt that industry, or you can disrupt yourself as an incumbent in the space, or you can be disrupted. So it's really, it's up to you as a company and, depending on your positioning. But the great thing is you have access to all that variable compute and raw power, and also tools like DevOps to help you innovate very, very quickly and, and really and win. So this, this is also, I think, an interesting point, because in the prior generation, past couple of decades, we've been very much used to this software development process that's very much a waterfall process. But today, as we've been talking about reducing these innovation cycles, you're moving into a much more iterative, agile development process, and one that includes things like continuously testing your code, continuously making sure that your code is releasable, things like that. It's all about agility these days, right? And like we just heard. So as a result of that, you are really reducing the cost of innovation, as from going from left to right, because you're not waiting again, a year before you hope that your feature is going to resonate with your customers. You know that immediately. So that's what it's all about today. Another image, and this is from our friends at Chef, which I thought is really also captures the moment pretty well, is that you go from the 1980s, the mainframe era, all the way to the cloud era in which we are today, the 2010 and plus, and Rackspace, really kind of was played in the 2000, that decade in the data center space, and we were very successful in that. But we've noticed that over time, it's become incredibly difficult, right? Because you've got this access to so much variable compute and this wall of virtual compute that's in front of you. But you notice that the people that are managing them, it's impossible to say, hey, this one individual, you see that small guy down there, in the cloud box. And he doesn't necessarily have the tools or the ability to manage this phenomenal kind of set of variables in front of him. He has to figure out how do you really manage all the size, the fact that there's so much proliferation of device and across data centers, across the world, across environments, your dev, staging, and production environments. You've got highly complex environments set up just as a result of that. You've got speed. You're trying to reduce any kind of, there's no tolerance for latency these days. And on top of that, you're also trying to figure out how do you maintain your application so that it's highly available. So there's no, there's extremely high emphasis on stability and then reliability. Just make sure it never goes down because you never want your customers to be hurt by an app that's down. So, and you'll hear this again from from Zipline and how we're helping them on this topic. Luckily for us, a few companies, they actually, they thought about this topic very deeply, including Rackspace, by the way, in the late 2000s. And these are just a few, like Flickrs and Facebooks, where they talked about these concepts like blameless postmortems, where you've got your development teams talking to your operations teams and not really pointing fingers to each other, but really being constructive and, in full transparency, trying to solve this, point of iterating to success, right, to the version that actually matters to the customer based on the feedback that they've received. They've talked about infrastructure automation with tools like Chef, where you're treating your infrastructure like code rather than as discrete devices that you need to go and log into and SSH into. Performance monitoring response, knowing at any point in time how your application and your infrastructure is performing because you're absolutely linked. They're not disparate in this day and age. So you need to know how your AppDex score relates to your CPU, your threshold. So these items and open source technologies, because it's such a big problem, you need to use a community, and these open source tools have proliferated. It's really allowing companies to really innovate quickly. So these companies really thought about these concepts. They also started to use these, what has now become a de facto set of tools, like Chef for config management, or New Relic for monitoring, or RabbitMQ for queuing, or Redis for caching. So this has become essentially the de facto set. And this is, again, only a small group of tools that we've put up here. But this is essentially how now companies that are either internet-centric or trying to be web scale or, or modern enterprises that are trying to build their apps in a highly available manner and based on those variables that I mentioned, these are the tools that they're using. So, you can be religious about the topic DevOps and, talk about how it's defined. And absolutely, it's a cultural movement, and that's, you can go on all day about that. But I think there's no doubt that the benefits of what you get in this topic, from this topic, is that you're able to really get to market very, very quickly. So you're able to accelerate your deployment times. You're absolutely able to, improve your deployment quality by reducing bugs. You're able to keep your environments in sync, so you're really efficient as a result of that by keeping your dev, staging, and production environments. And ultimately, as a company, you're able to focus on your customers. You're able to say, hey, customer A, what do you really care about? And then you're taking that feedback and you're saying, okay, let me quickly iterate on that code. Let me change the red button to the yellow button because that's what the customer cares about. And you're leaving DevOps to basically handle that and be equally flexible from a code perspective. So Rackspace, like I mentioned, we were very much part of that that story back in the late 2000s. And our own cloud, our Rackspace cloud, was launched very much using these principles. We embody these principles daily in our product teams. We launched our cloud that way. In 2013, like you see here, we pushed code into production 2,500 times. I mean, if you just think about that math there, that's pretty astounding. But that is essentially the de facto in how highly innovative companies operate today. You're constantly pushing code into production because you don't have to have it perfect. Don't worry, be crappy. You heard guys say that, so that's exactly how we think about it. We don't push crap, but we're good. Ultimately, the DevOps principles and tools, and essentially these are fundamental to how we think about our product teams. We have to use them. Ultimately, we heard our customers also ask about help on this topic. They said, hey, it's great that you're providing infrastructure, but we also love if you could help us on this topic of how do we get even faster, more agile, et cetera. So we launched something called DevOps Automation Service back in December 2013, and essentially to help customers on this topic. How do we manage their operations in a way that treats their infrastructure like code? How do we respond proactively to alerts so that they don't have to do that at 3 o'clock in the morning? But essentially to do that. And then we also launched something called Rackspace DevOps Advisory Service to help companies that are lower on the maturity curve on DevOps. And how do you bring them closer to this innovation cycle? If you're a traditional company looking to move forward into this era and to become a modern company, a modern enterprise on this topic, then we can help you on that as well. So we believe so deeply in this topic that when you come to Rackspace, you basically have only a couple choices. We manage your operations a couple ways. What we've been doing historically, which is the sysops way or sysadmin way, which is server by server treatment. And now we are providing what we call DevOps automation, where we automate your application environment, we do all this deep performance monitoring, and we treat your infrastructure like code. So if companies looking to scale, and you'll hear how Zipline is hoping to scale and how we've helped them do that, they are serviced out at this service level. So in conclusion, we have got this. This is kind of a picture of the sort of technologies that we support. So everything from Chef and Windows DSC on the infrastructure automation piece, to StatsG and Graphite, and New Relic on the monitoring piece, log aggregation, source control, our stacks, which are basically our best-of-breed stacks that we have spent a lot of time working with our customers like Zipline to perfect. And we've said, okay, they run a Node.js application, so we've got plenty of customers that work on that web framework, and we've refined that stack. So on day one, when you're trying to get up and running and your application up and running, we provide you something that is absolutely fine-tuned for your business. And then we also support a whole range of technologies that you see at the bottom, MongoDB and Postgres and Gluster and Redis, et cetera. So all this is essentially how we support our customers. So I was with my kids at Lego World recently, or Legoland, I think that's the term, in Orlando, Florida recently. So I have a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I was thinking when these guys, both my 5 and 1-year-old, was knocking out all the the rig. This is called the Red Big Spaceman, I think, something like that. I was thinking, it's exactly what we're doing, because what we're doing here is we're adding all these components, whether they are technologies or web frameworks, and ultimately what we're doing is making sure that they look exactly the same. So when you think about Chef and config management, you should think about this, because you're stamping out the exact same Red Big Spaceman 1,000 times, and you don't get emotional about that because they look exactly the same. So you should never get, so things about automation and machinery, has a lot of, analogous components. So I get inspiration from weird places, so that's where that came from. So this is essentially how we operate with our customers. So we've got, on the left side, you've got our customer development team. So, you'll hear Zipline talk about the fact that they have, something like, 4 or 5 developers. And their operations teams are, relatively small. And what we do on our side is we have, what we believe a world-class DevOps engineering team that's essentially available 24/7, all year long. On the right side, you see essentially the data plane that we automate using things like Chef and Windows DSC. And we essentially are there for them at 3 o'clock in the morning when a monitoring alarm goes off using New Relic. We engage very quickly. We've also automated their infrastructure, so we know exactly how they're set up, and then we engage with the operations team. So this is, we believe, the de facto way in which startups and companies that are looking to innovate in modern enterprises should operate. They shouldn't be focused on internally worrying about the infrastructure and how whether the infrastructure is going to be flexible enough for them to push code. They hopefully, what we are trying to do is help them, be more focused to their customer, write their app, and focus on that part of the business, and we can engage in the rest. So New Relic, speaking of good mantras, this one we recently announced that in New Relic we've got very deep integration with them, where we were able to essentially generate things like tickets and other sort of mediums on our team at 3 o'clock in the morning when we breach certain thresholds, whether it's AppDex score or it's error rate or whatever it may be. These things are extremely integrated into Rackspace's system and DNA, and we're able to essentially be an extension of your team, so you don't have to worry about that stuff. So ultimately, we want all our customers to look like this guy. He's got a big grin on his face, and we hope all you guys have big grins on your faces, because you guys have a tough job, right? You're trying to innovate. You're trying to get from one era to the next, and ultimately, we want to essentially do all that we can so that you can just focus on writing your app, and we'll do the rest. And that's what we aspire to do. So you can learn more about what we do at rackspace.com/DevOps. And now I'd love to introduce Zipline and how they are solving for their app that's about to launch and the scale that they're anticipating. And before I do that, a quick video.
Zipline is an open platform to move money. We're located in St. Louis. We are creating a platform that lets people determine how money moves in their lives, not your bank or MasterCard or Visa or some institution.
If I go out with a friend and we spend the day together and I want to give her $10 because she bought lunch earlier, I can't do that unless I have cash. But I could send her a picture of what we ate. As soon as money can move that simply and that intuitively, that's the game changer. With Zipline, sending money is as easy as sending someone a picture. We came up with this idea of if once you put in the $ and an amount and the @ sign right after that, then the system understands that money is being sent. And that's something that we're so used to doing because of Twitter and Facebook. @someone is always tagging that person.
The application is composed of two primary parts. The application's API, and that deals with more the UX for the front-end application. And then we have a back-end that handles all of the payment. We use Node.js as our stack on the back-end. We use MongoDB and Redis as our data stores. We're all about having a very organic growth model. So you get one person in a group, and then they invite all the other people, and quickly you have these groups of people joining and getting on board. So we have to be ready to scale, and scale quickly. We looked at options, and we saw Rackspace DevOps, and we thought, this would be excellent. We can have kind of our own Rackspace team that kind of works on our platform.
A lot of times the conventional wisdom that we hear when we're out talking is, put your platform on something simple, beginning, platform as a service someplace, and then one of these days your company will mature into something big enough to be with, a larger platform. But we felt differently than that.
Rackspace has been super responsive about things. We've done some really cool things. Zero downtime deployments was something that we wanted to do. They came alongside of us and said, okay, let's make this happen. It's been awesome. We've worked with them to have a very modular, very flexible, and a very iterative and fast-moving system. So we can push code, we can deploy codes. Obviously, with messaging, you've got to make sure that you're up.
We felt like when we added Rackspace DevOps, it was almost like having 2 people added to our dev team.
So Rackspace DevOps does everything from taking our code in GitHub, going through Chef, creates monitors, it can run tests.
We don't have to worry about anything other than the things that make Zipline unique.
And so that takes a lot of burden off of us to do what we want to do, which is to build and deploy, an application that could change the world.
All right, with that, please welcome Kirk Bowman of Zipline. All right.
Thanks. Appreciate you guys having us here today. And fortunately, based on what Guy Kawasaki said, we wanted to kind of start off where he started with his talk about the mantra, and that is what our vision is. And that if you're a tech company, as opposed to a company that just uses technology, as a tech company, the loudest voice of that vision, the loudest voice of that mantra should be the technology itself. So we don't have a company where there's marketing and branding on one side and the IT people are on the other side. We talk about our mantra, we talk about our vision all the time in our technology meetings. And that vision, wrong button, and that mantra is this: how you move money. The emphasis there is on you and not on the money. And the reason we say that is this: we really hate the word payment platform, because the way we see it, you pay your utility company, you pay Target. But that's not how you live your life, especially with the people you know. You live your life, you text each other, you share songs, you send pictures and emojis, and you have a life that unfolds in real time. And so if you're able to take that platform, that messaging platform where your life takes place, where a lot of your life takes place, and seamlessly merge money into that experience in a way that nobody's standing in the middle taking a fee out of that, then you get some very interesting data. And the most interesting data we got out of our beta was this: 18 to 1. And we predicted this to be maybe 4 or 5 to 1. But here's why this is so important. We found that there are, when you merge those things together, there are 18 social, real-time human interactions to every financial transaction. This is the power of this merger. We see payment platforms, this thing that we don't want to be, as missing out on the 18 best parts of the transaction. So what you end up with is, for instance, I'll flip on the TV and I'll see a bank ad, and it'll say, use our mobile wallet to settle your check at the end of the night. But you're settling your check at the end of the night that's not where your life starts. Your life starts hours before that or days before that when somebody's saying, hey, burgers or pizza, what are we going to have? And that's where the conversation starts. And then it can end with money if it needs to, but it doesn't necessarily have that effect. And so if you take that platform, you take that messaging platform, and weave something into it, bake something into it that is very seamless. This is a little example you'll see where you're already doing keystrokes. So we give you some magic keystrokes, $, dollar amount, at, select the person. We also bake into this a little bit or merge into it security layers that are second factors of authentication, but they're not disruptive to the experience. Or this editing tool that lets you change the dollar amount of the payment before it comes final. That little 10 seconds of flow may seem, simple. It is simple, but making it work and merging it into that experience without having to navigate to a form and ask how much and who to really lets new things unfold instead of sponsoring your friend who's running a half marathon and sending her $25 a couple days later. You can jump in that zip thread with 50 of her friends, and you're in there in real time encouraging her during that run and actually sponsoring her at $2 a mile or 50 cents a mile or being part of that experience. Take those 60 people in that thread and then keep expanding that out. Think of 6,000 people or 60,000 sports fans around an event and raising money for their team's charity or just paying off a little friendly bet between people that go from one college to the other. And the slide that we want to have, and it's kind of a motivation for us because we don't have this slide yet, something we want to do, and then I'll introduce Glenn Selle, is we look forward to people experiencing Zipline not using our app at all, but other app developers who want to just adopt those keystrokes and hit our API for free movement of money. I was reading this week about the app that uses your phone, and it's a technological product that is a lock on the door of your house. Approach with your phone, it unlocks your house. We dream about the day when you give access on someone else's app to your house, and that person walks in and feeds your dog, and then on that same app, hitting the Zipline API lets you say thank you, when you're going to come back, and you pay that person that helped to come in and feed your dog. I'm going to introduce you to our software lead. This is co-founder Glenn Selle. I used to say he's the smartest 17-year-old I ever met, but he turned 18. I challenge, if you get a chance to meet him today, 30 seconds with him and you'll know why he's such a great leader on our team, and that our team, we have a joke around the office that Glenn is our software lead except for 2 hours every other week when he has to go get his braces tightened. So I'll give it over to Glenn. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Kirk. So I'm going to go ahead and cover 3 main points. I'm going to talk about our architecture and stack, and then the need for DevOps, and then why we chose Rackspace DevOps Automation Service. So our stack is fairly vanilla, but it was built with several design philosophies. We wanted each part of our application to do one thing and one thing very well. So we call that separate concerns. We wanted something that was going to be horizontally scalable. So each aspect of the application can be scaled according to the load. And then some of these pieces, not all of them, but some of the critical aspects of our application are elastically connected with message queues, so we can reduce the possibility that we lose data if one of those pieces goes down. And we also increase our uptime as a result. So like I said, Prashanth also mentioned this. We're based on Node, so everything's Node.js. We build on MongoDB and Redis with ObjectRocket. And this is a nice graph or chart showing the architecture as a whole. You can see we have the application API. That's what our native apps hit. The money API, as we call it, is what actually moves the money. It's kind of the engine behind everything. We have a real-time messaging infrastructure that's composed of WAMP servers. And then we also have an auth server. And we use a lot of different third-party services. And you can see, too, we have the message queue. That's what allows us to elastically connect that application API with the money API so that we don't lose transactions, for example, if the money API were ever to go down. And we are powered by Rackspace. We use everything from public cloud to storage with ObjectRocket. We use, of course, DevOps Automation Service, private cloud as well. So we use a whole range of things powered by Rackspace. Like you saw on the diagram, we have an application API, then the money API, and then the real-time messaging framework. Each one of those, again, is independent and can be scaled appropriately. The APIs are RESTful, they're scalable, and they're built for internal and external consumption. As Kirk mentioned, we want to be able to build something that can be consumed by others and by ourselves. The messaging infrastructure is built on WAMP. It's a subprotocol of WebSockets. It allows for both pub/sub and RPC-based design patterns. And it's also independently scalable because, as Kirk mentioned, we anticipate conversation as the core of our product, not necessarily transactions. So we want to be able to scale this messaging infrastructure very quickly as needed. So let's talk about the need for DevOps. One of the cool things about Rackspace DevOps Automation Service is that you can come to the table with a DevOps philosophy. And Rackspace can take that and say, all right, this is what this looks like. This is how you make this happen. So this is our DevOps philosophy. We want iterative and fast-paced development. We don't want to be hindered by. We want to write code, test code, and then deploy code very quickly. And then we want something that's not only flexible, but it's configurable into the future. Because as we anticipate growth, we want our DevOps solution to continue to grow with us. So we had a few other challenges on top of that. We wanted something that was going to allow us to have continuous integration. We have separate environments for different people internally within Zipline. So we have dev, staging, production, and demo. And we wanted to make sure that each of those was configured properly. And they're also, again, independent, and we can scale those as needed. We wanted stable and consistent deployments. We don't want to worry about, we're going to deploy here. Can we trust it? We have to have consistent deployments that work every single time. And that's all done with Rackspace. And those deployments can be customized. And you can not only see the chef recipes that are actually making it all happen behind the scenes, but Rackspace can work with you and do it all as well. So you have the ability you have transparency to see what's happening under the hood, and then Rackspace can actually make it all happen. We wanted zero downtime deployments, especially for the messaging infrastructure. We don't want that to go down. So we wanted to make sure we'd have something that would have very high uptime and allow us to, again, write code, test code, and build our application, but not have to worry about downtime with critical application pieces. And then we wanted something, as a startup, we wanted something that was seamless from the start, but then configurable into the future. Something that would allow us to get up and running quickly, but then allow us to grow and modify and iterate our DevOps as we grew. Something that was cost effective, and we wanted someone that would be there around the clock. And this was really not possible if we tried to hire an in-house person. We wanted someone that would know our application, and they would be able to diagnose issues with the application anytime. So why Rackspace DevOps? I've already mentioned several things, but Rackspace DevOps is an extension of your team. It's not just another service. They're there to work with you. You can call them, you can collaborate with them. It's literally an extension of your team. DevOps through Rackspace is also a DevOps solution that allows you to build a DevOps solution according to your needs and according to your philosophy, what you want to see in DevOps. They're not going to come and say, well, you need to do this, 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 and that's how we do it here at Rackspace. They're going to say, what do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? And then they're going to be able to build that solution for you based on what you need. And then, again, there's someone there around the clock that knows your application, that knows DevOps, and they can make sure that the application is up, is running. If there are any issues, they can diagnose those. In fact, we had a few funny stories when we first started with Rackspace where we had a couple of rackers pull some all-nighters with us, staying up till 4 and going back and forth. And so, I mean, they're literally there 24/7, and they work with you, and they will make sure that your application, whatever it is up, is running properly as you expect. And then Rackspace DevOps Automation Service is powerful and flexible. They work with you to customize the chef deployments as you need them customized to fit the stack. As Prashanth mentioned, there's a lot of support for all those stacks, and customers going through those just make those stacks better. They're constantly improving those stacks and making those the best they could possibly be. And ultimately, allowing you to be flexible as you grow. This is a diagram of our commit history. This is kind of a snapshot of our API's development. This would be the application API. And we started Rackspace in about mid-July, and then the application was basically deployed and out there right at the beginning of August. And you can see that we had, we were committing and we were doing development, but as soon as we started Rackspace and the applications were deployed, the commits and the collaboration and the development on the API took off. And this is a picture of a Rackspace ticket. So this is one of the ways that you work with the Rackspace engineering team. And I had an application dependency I needed installed last week, and I literally created the ticket later in the day, 5, 6 o'clock, and I said, I need this installed, and they're like, okay, just want to make sure you want this installed, these environments. I said, that's great. And then by the next morning when I came in to the office, it was done. So right there, again, they're there to work with you and to help you. They're there 24/7, and they're going to make things very quick and very empowering because you're not having to worry about installing those system dependencies. I could write the application code that was going to use that and know that by the next day it was going to be done, and I could actually deploy the application and go. So ultimately, Rackspace is empowering and enabling Zipline as we prepare for a launch to make sure that our DevOps is solid, our DevOps is flexible, we can grow into it, and ultimately we're ready to handle some massive scale and continue to iterate and develop our product as we seek to change how people move money. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kirk and Glenn and Prashanth. That's a great presentation on all the DevOps automation capabilities. We have some more great presentations coming right up from Cloud Passage, Forrester, Edelman, but right now we're up on a break. So why don't we